Okay, good afternoon, Year 13. We're here to do Thomas Hardy and At an Inn. I'm going to start off by doing a bit of context, and as we progressively go through the poem, I will also link to Gatsby, and I'm going to show you 3 places that I want to link. But most importantly in this video, I want to address the fact that many of you didn't look at form and structure when you looked at the poetry last time. So I'm going to put particular emphasis on things like the sounds of words, the metrical patterns, the use of a jambon, susurras, and in this particular poem, the use of 2 different meters, which I'm sure many of you picked up, the trimeter and the dimeter, the 3-stress, 2-stress alternate line pattern. But to begin with, Thomas Hardy is one of the main Victorian writers that you need to know about. I think what makes him one of the great masters, if I can use a patriarchal metaphor like that, is the fact that he goes, look at that, from 1840 through to 1928. So he spans the Victorian age into the modern age. And you could argue that that is the biggest change in terms of literature, because you move from the 19th century realist novel through to the experimentation of James Joyce, Virginia Woolf, D.H. Lawrence, Wyndham Lewis, and many others by the end, okay? And that is going to be very important because D.H. Lawrence, for instance, who is a key modernist writer, identified Thomas Hardy as a proto-modernist. And by proto, I mean a kind of before modernism. He started to define some of the ground. Now, why is that? Well, because I think he was very interested in things like evolution. He knew about the evolution debate. He knew about developments in psychology, like William James. And he began to see the world in a very dark lens. And I think this is one of the reasons why there was such a furore about his novels, especially the final novel which he wrote, which was called Tess of the D'Urbervilles, which had rape in it, sex outside marriage, and various things. And he did this because he was actually a feminist, and he was very worried about the way that women were treated. And this produced an absolute hideous reaction from the Victorians. Ella?
What is furore?
Furore just means real rage and anger from the public, okay? And he never wrote a novel again. And it's sad, because I think Tess of the D'Urbervilles is one of the greatest novels in the English language. Fortunately, he turned to poetry, and fortunately, he was a great poet. And he was a very varied poet as well. Now, At an Inn is about, I'm not going to go into autobiography because there are various theories about who this woman might be, and it seems to be autobiographical, but I don't think it's worth pursuing that. I don't see that that's a very fertile area to pursue at all. What it's about, of course, is thwarted love. Love that could have been. Now, immediately we're going to link it to Gatsby, aren't we? Okay, there's huge potential in the Gatsby and Daisy relationship, especially before Tom, of course. So it's about the opportunity being lost. Seems to be a very English theme of love, the kind of classic storyline, brief encounter, where man and woman could have been together, but they never really make it come to fruition for whatever reason. Now, this is a very beautiful poem. It's very, very carefully structured. And you'll notice that it's very regular in terms of its meter. As I said, the first line is a trimeter, and the second line is a dimeter, okay? So we go from the 3 stresses to the 2 stresses. Now, we can't just feature spot and just say, hey, this is what we see over here. We need to think about what's the effect of that. And I'm going to suggest to you that this very tight metrical scheme is indicative of a man who is trying to control his feelings. And the meter allows him to kind of put a kind of cage around the grief that he feels. And I think this regularity is incredibly powerful. So it opens at an inn, not the inn, at an inn. As though it doesn't matter which one, does it? It's anonymous. And I think that in itself is quite interesting. When we as strangers sought the catering care, veiled smiles bespoke their thought of what we were. So as they go into this inn, this anonymous inn, people welcome them. You have this very gentle use of sibilance here, don't you? Sibilance can be very harsh sometimes, but here it's almost like what we'd call susurration, like whispering. Strangers sought their catering care. And again, the consonants there of catering and care suggest that these people were incredibly attentive to them. So it's a very positive opening, isn't it? It gives a sense of welcoming, of light, and of the potential for this love. Now, why are these people so nice to them? Well, veiled smiles suggest that the people see them as lovers, possibly as illicit lovers. And they kind of leave them alone, don't they? They warmed as they opined, as they came to this decision, us more than friends. Notice the thesaurus here, that we had all resigned for love's dear ends. Well, the thesaurus there perfectly creates symmetry between the lines, doesn't it? And I'm going to suggest to you that symmetry and that regular meter is indicative of the fact that the universe is in balance. This is love, isn't it? And it's this beautiful opening. So here, what's been foreshadowed is an afternoon of love and passion. It's what he seems to be hoping for. Alas, it is not to be, as we shall see. And that love, and that swift sympathy with living love, which quicks the world, maybe the spheres above made them our ministers, move them to say, "Ah, God, that bliss like theirs would flush our day." Well, this is an even more joyful stanza, isn't it? It's all about pleasure and the promise of this passionate afternoon. Now, if we're trying to find a kind of a story here, this seems to be like the meeting for love, possibly we could say sex, okay? And it would certainly seem as though the narrator's hoping that this relationship is going to come to fruition and go somewhere, doesn't it? And at this point, it seems that he's incredibly optimistic. Swift and sympathy there, we've got the sibilance there, mixing with the liquids of living love. Now that's a beautiful phrase, isn't it? Living meaning that the love is vital, that it's real. And I'm thinking of a big connection there to Gatsby in this particular stanza, and I'll go into that in a little bit more. And notice here he invents his own very delightful verb, which quicks the world. So he invents this word just to show this is what the world goes quicker. So it's this notion, isn't it, that love is at the center of creation. So if we think about nature, fertility, love, sexuality, all of these things are at the absolute center of the earth. And then he turns from the present and the now to the heavens. And he uses cosmological, celestial imagery. The spheres made above. Now you'll know that many different writers use the idea that goes back, I believe, to ancient Greece, that the stars were all on big spheres and that they turned around in the heavens. And as they turned, there was the most beautiful music. So it's about the idea of cosmic harmony. Now this is unusual for Hardy because Hardy often paints the universe as being dark, bleak, mechanistic, about death and about tragedy. Alicia's been reading a bit of Hardy. That's the case, isn't it? Pretty doomed stuff, isn't it? This is much more of a romantic idea, of romanticism, isn't it? Which is the idea of nature as harmonious and of the idea of this kind of divine music that the poet can listen to. Yes, Ella?
Is the United States above?
Yeah. Yes, it goes back to ancient Greece, yeah. I'd have to look up who, but it's very much, I think it's a pre-Socratic myth. And the idea was as the spheres go around, they play this delightful music, like the music of the gods. So you see that everything is in tune at this particular time, isn't it, okay? And that's why he lets out this gasp, doesn't he? Ah, God, that bliss like theirs would flush our day. Such hope, isn't it? Such longing and such nostalgia, okay? And we were left alone as love's own pair. So again, we have the personification of love here. 100% is where I was going with that. That will be one of the exercises that we do today. Yet never, now look at this, yet never the love light shone, and there we've still got the liquids, and we've got this compounding here, love light. Sounds like it's going to continue in the same tone, doesn't it? But instead, we have a massive turn in the poem, like we've seen in sonnets, don't we? When we move, don't we, between the sestet and the octave. And he says, between us there. You don't quite realize what the turn's going to be till the but, and then the but signals that which chilled the breath. Notice that incredible dramatic tonal change of the afternoon. So the afternoon is personified, isn't it? And this chilling, this use of pathetic fallacy, well, it's something that Hardy uses all of the time. The idea of the chilledness of winter, the deadness of winter, anti-fertility, etc. So notice the way that all of the ocular imagery changed from the light and the livingness and stuff. And now it's like everything darkens and the mood really changes. So when we're talking about this, we're talking about AO2 structures, aren't we? And we're talking about transitions, aren't we? So the transition is not so much metrical here, and it's not really clearly marked, because it happens mid-stanza, doesn't it, yeah? And palsied until death. This is a beautiful word, because palsy used to mean like illness or the shakes like Parkinson's disease. So you see, as this personification becomes darker, doesn't it, as the afternoon moves from being chilled to kind of diseased, yeah? The pain flies tune, almost like the fly that's flying around the window changes tune. So again, we move from the celestial imagery, don't we, here to the fly. And so nature moves from this beautiful, harmonious thing, this epic thing, to this kind of fly, which is a kind of vermin. And it's as though even the fly can pick up on this incredible change, yeah? The kiss, their zeal foretold. Well, we might want to link that to your kiss, Alicia, mightn't we, to the idea that when Gatsby kissed Daisy, the world blossomed for him. Here, the kiss does not occur. So the afternoon should have been a forerunner to this physical passion and this outlet that he obviously wants with this woman. But something happened. He doesn't articulate what it is. And I would suggest he doesn't, because he doesn't know what it was. Suddenly, inexplicably, enigmatically, the mood darkened and the moment was lost. Now that sounds more like the Hardy we know, doesn't it, Alicia? The Hardy who believes in fate and dark imagery, and that the universe is actually against us in many ways. And now Dean come, came not. Beautiful story here, came not, stops us. Within his hold, love lingered none. When we had the L's before, the liquid L's above, living love, now think about what happens with love lingered. What is it about lingered? Well, the sound lingers, doesn't it? It's a long, drawn-out vowel, isn't it? Sound, lingered. You can hear it, can't you? Now add this use of the liquid lingered to the word none, which is also onomatopoeic, isn't it? And it expresses a kind of deadness, doesn't it? But it's not tremendously dramatic. It's not like the afternoon was completely screwed up all of a sudden, was it? It's kind of like it slowly died. Something happened. And that verb lingering, I think, is the key idea, isn't it? Because You know, we talk about a lingering death. It means a slow death where you kind of hang on, don't you? And there's something absolutely awful and terrible about this slow lingeringness, isn't it? Now we'll notice love isn't so nice anymore. He remains personified. Here he becomes a kind of sadist, doesn't he? Why cast ye on our port a bloom not ours? So he asks this question, he's got no answer. Why didn't it bloom? Well, I think we could link that again to Gatsby. Because remember, the world blossomed for Gatsby, didn't it? But it blossomed because the daisy that he was in love with was a fictitious and fictitious daisy, a mythical daisy, wasn't it? Yeah? Why shaped us for his sport, he asks, in after hours? Here again, sport is a very interesting verb, isn't it? It's an old use of the term sport, a verb, which is the idea that love kind of plays with you. So here love becomes a sadist, characterized by cruelty. And to be honest with you, this is a kind of characterization of love that we often see. Do you remember Cupid shoots people with arrows? Sometimes just for fun, doesn't he? And now we get the darkest of all the stanzas, all right? As we seemed, we were not, that day afar. So we learn that this is a distant memory, and this is an old man looking back at this moment of thwarted passion. He seems embittered, doesn't he? Still asking the same questions. What the hell happened that day? It all looked so good, yeah? But nothing came to fruition, did it? And now we see not what we aching are. Now that's mysterious, isn't it? What does he mean by that? Well, first they're aching. Now that might be infirmity and old age, but it might also be, of course, that pain, that wound of love, never healed. Hardy was desperately unhappy in his marriage. Desperately unhappy. And so I think, in a sense, he's writing within that paradigm of frustration. There, that autobiographical idea might be useful. And this is what I think you'll find very interesting, guys. Oh, severing sea and land, there he cries out, doesn't he? It's almost biblical. Oh, laws of men. Now, if you think very carefully, doesn't the sea also sever Gatsby and Daisy as Gatsby stretches out at the green light? And here, the severing sea, think of that look what happens with the sibilant severing. There's a harshness in that, isn't there? And we imagine, don't we, something being dissected, a knife moving through tissue, etc. It's quite a harsh verb, isn't it? O laws of men. Hardy hated the Victorian age. He thought it was a hypocritical age. He thought the whole idea that a fallen woman, the sexual morality, the puritanicalness, he thought it was all utter hypocrisy, and he loathed it. So here he directly challenges the laws of men. Ere death once let us stand as we stood then. In other words, he wants to be taken back in time. And of course, who's that? Gatsby, who believes that we can reach the past again. However, I would say there's a very different tone. This is the plaintive tone of someone who knows that can never be. Wouldn't you agree? Whereas Gatsby was ever the optimist and said, of course you can. Do you remember? So Hardy to me here, or I shouldn't say Hardy, I should say the persona of the poem and Hardy's poem seems to be embittered. And this is an idle longing. It's said with a recognition that it's impossible, that the past is a strange place that we will never have access to again. But Gatsby breaks the rules, doesn't he? He believes that we can return to the past. he has his kind of metaphorical time machine, doesn't he? And he can get beyond the confines of the present. So I think it's a really interesting comparison between those two poems. Both of them, I'll end by saying, the potential for this massive celestial love that's thwarted and lost. And in that sense, I think these poem and the novel connect very well indeed.